overtime.
Good evening, everyone. It's 6 p.m. on July the 18th, and the City Council Budget Workshop will now come to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Patty Gentry, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Frank Bankert.
Present.
Councilmember Leslie Notero.
Here.
Councilmember Lloyd Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Zabel.
Here.
Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn.
Here.
Mayor Dave Gaddis.
Here.
Interim City Manager Kyle Riefler.
Here.
Mr. Lynn Reeves.
Here.
And Councilmember Jody Shirley has not arrived.
Thank you, Patty. We have one item on this agenda, which is the continuation of discussion and review of the city Bel Air Beach fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. Immediately following this meeting, we will have a special council meeting for consideration of setting the tentative millage rate for fiscal year 2022 and 2023. I'd like to thank Lynn Reeves for joining us. And Lynn, I've asked that you be here to assist Kyle as needed. Although Lynn is joining us, I request that all council members direct their questions directly to Kyle, but please wait until called on to help me keep some order to this meeting. Before we begin, we had a piece of information that was handed out to us during this meeting. I have not seen this one yet. It was given to us by Mike Zabel. Would you like to go ahead and discuss this?
That should be probably addressed during the millage conversation.
Oh, it's the millage.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. All right. Well, we'll just continue moving forward. So what we've got is our budget, our proposed budget, and the last time that we met on this, we did have some questions. There were also some suggestions. I noticed that we received updated date. There's a publication date on the new proposed budget. So what I was going to do was just start by going around the room and giving each council member the opportunity to ask questions. What I would like for everyone to do is just wait till you're called on, and then once I call on you, I want you to call out the page number and exactly what budget item it is that we are discussing. Also, Patty, would you please make a note that Councilmember Shirley has arrived, and that is at 6:03.
Thank you.
All right, so why don't we just start going to my right here. Mr. Roberts.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Actually, I know when each of us had an opportunity to meet with Rand, the city manager, I know I met with him for a couple of hours to review the budget at that time. I brought up a couple or a few things at that particular meeting. Those have already been addressed, so I'm good.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Banker.
I went through the budget page by page. I got some things noteworthy, I guess, but we have an interim city manager. I'm sure you memorize this better than all. Do you see any places where we could cut the budget, save some money, rather than what is proposed here? I mean, I'm sure you went over with, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but we're going to probably be interviewing you tomorrow. But what I'm saying is, this is what you'll have to work with when you become city manager. So, what do you think of this? I'm asking. Is that a fair question for you?
Any question you'd like to ask?
I think it's a well put together budget. If given goals to cut it by a certain percentage, I could explore that. Coming on this year, I think it's a good solid budget for the upcoming year.
Well, my question is, we're facing, I guess last week was a 9% inflation rate so far, and we're expecting it to be double digits by the end of the year. So would it be feasible to cut anything? Anything sticking out in your mind is what you're saying?
Nothing jumps right out at me. Some of the things that you guys brought up could be looked at or adjusted if that's how you wanted to go into this budget year. As far as like with the code enforcement, we could budget it lower for the cut in the 5 hours. These software we're talking about in finance, that could be adjusted.
Excuse me, what? Am I the only person hearing the noise?
No,
I heard it too.
It's my insulin pod. It's nothing I can turn off, otherwise I'll die, so we good.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure I wasn't losing my mind, or our batteries were going dead or something. All right, I'm sorry.
Should say-
Please continue.
I think he gave you my answers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Leslie Nataro.
I have no,
Is it on?
is it on? I have no questions about the budget. I think it's a very, very good budget. It's got, it's like, you know, with the uncertainty that's going on in the world, I think it's great. I'd be very happy for it the way it is.
Thank you very much. Jody Shirley.
Well, just a couple of things just to start off with is the budget includes city manager Lynn Reeves. That needs to be changed to have Kyle's name on it. Whoever, on the presentation, right?
Yeah, we
Before it's
made
filled
note
in.
of that, but that'll be
Okay.
with the final budget.
Okay. But as I go through it, under, on page 14, under the capital funds, we've got roughly $1.1 million intergovernmental. I'm not sure if I'm clear on that.
Transfers in, transfers out.
Where is that? Where are those funds coming from, do you know?
So that's the funds that are allocated for the capital projects from the general.
So it's everything we have in reserve for those capital projects, is that
So-
is that the way I
If you
should
go to the
understand
capital
that?
projects section and you see the summary, which is on page would be capital outlay on page 47. And in this section, it lays out all of the capital projects that are saved up for, planned out. So that summarizes,
I guess what I'm having struggle with is I don't see a tie to number anywhere, like, shouldn't I see that number coming out of a fund somewhere? And I'm just having a struggle finding that.
Your question about.
Lynn, do you know how that works?
Are you talking about on page 14, the interfund transfers down at the bottom?
No,
both.
intergovernmental under capital funds. I see where we're utilizing reserves, that's clearly under general.
Okay. Let me go look to 47. Part of the intergovernmental probably is the, if I remember right, it's the money for Boulevard. Let's see, 47.
I'll pull it Boulevard is 930,000.
Right. Wait a minute.
I don't know,
You
maybe
want
I should,
to,
maybe I should call our accounting firm.
no, I'm just trying to find the right page. Okay. So Gulf Boulevard is 930. I'm trying to find what the other additional is. Are we getting anything, Kyle, from the county?
Are we? What are you asking? I'm sorry.
That's a question. Jody, what I'll do, I'll look at this a little more detail and get back to you on that. And everyone, I'll send the email to you.
Okay. Okay, so Glenn's gonna get back.
All right.
But I think it's part of the Gulf Boulevard.
Okay, and maybe I just answered my question on this one. No, okay, so on page 17, we've got revenues, the revenues and expenditure summary, and there's other financing sources, and it's 391,000. Do we know what that is?
You said that was on page 17?
Page 17, under revenues.
Is that that hero, that code, right? Is that that code one?
Oh, no, that was 802.
Yeah, but it's broken down over 2 years or something like that.
Oh, is that what it is?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's 2 years.
Is that what the other financing sources are?
That's not the right number, I can tell you that.
No, it's not. So is it everything outside of the ad valorem? Is that what I'm trying to get someone to give me some feedback here.
Well, the 2.487190, that is the ad valorem plus, the other revenues that we get in, like licenses.
The 2739, you mean?
Yeah. That money comes from like utility and franchise taxes, if you add those numbers up. I'm just trying to find where that number floated in from. When she put it over there. I'm trying to find where it flows from.
Looks like that's right here, page 14. These are all everything that we're putting on page 235.
Yeah.
There's a
Kyle, that's something we just need to ask Heather where that flows from.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be, I think, important to know, because if we have revenues coming from somewhere other than our, regular operating revenues, we might be an opportunity to work on tweaking those to get them up a little higher, whatever those revenues are.
Well, we have the other revenues with the finance, what do you call it? The franchise agreements, the state sales tax, we have other sources that come from there. The 62,000 from the marina that's
But that's all
projected for next year.
operating. But Lynn, right above that is operating revenues, so those would be included in that, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so I need some clarification what that is, if I could, please.
Which revenue are you?
It says other financing sources.
Page
And it's
17.
considered revenue. And I don't know what that is.
What's the account number for that? What's the accounting number?
There's not one. And there's nothing on the breakdown that gives you anything. Just some.
A multiple of accounting numbers. There's 2 pages of it.
I do have just a quick question on page 21. We have no election expenses in the 22-23 budget, but don't we have a fall election? It doesn't affect us, is that we just provide them the facility?
Right,
Okay.
right.
There are expenses.
I don't have any budget.
Page 21. 3,800.
That's
That was
the
last year.
last year. We're
That was
working in this
Sorry,
area.
yeah.
Just a couple of things, and I'm just looking purely going down the budgeted expenses, and wherever I see a major change in expenses, I'm kind of highlighting them, Here I see a $1,200 car allowance. I know we've talked about that before.
What page are we on?
Oh, I'm sorry, on page 26. And the only reason I ask about it is it's up 100%. So that's, I think the reasoning was because Lynn was doing all that, and now we don't have Lynn. Am I correct in saying that?
And I believe this year we added Laura to, because she runs back and forth to the bank with the deposits.
I'd like to make a comment on that. Normally, a car allowance is given to like the CEO or one of the top executives of a company, not to just everyone. And it seems like we're doing car allowances for quite a few people. Wouldn't it be more appropriate to have them do a mileage report and then that way we have some traceability of how many miles they're actually using, rather than just throwing a number out there? Because me looking on the outside, it looks like it's just a good way to give someone extra money on their salary, rather than having full justification for it. There's no traceability to this at all. So that's one of the things that I would like to see changed. Unless what you're trying to do is actually give the employee more compensation, a higher pay. And if that's the case, well then maybe that's what you should budget for and get away from the mileage or the vehicle expense. Yes.
I have a question about that. I mean, car allowance, if, let's say Laura uses her car to drive to the bank, does she submit a mileage thing? I mean, this isn't something that they just get as a blank, shall I say a blank check, a car allowance, is it?
No, it's a flat rate.
It's a flat rate?
It is. It is a flat rate, so the mileage is not tracked.
So is that just an annual thing that the person who uses their car gets $1,200?
Yes.
It's also considered taxable income, so it's, technically it's a pay increase. It's not really listed as your salary.
Okay, so it's
And
maybe-
that's why I bring it up, is because if I'm questioning it, who else is going to question it? Yes, sir.
2 years ago, the average mileage rate was around 35 to 40 cents a mile. Right now, it's over 85 cents a mile, so we might be getting a bargain. Without speeding up.
But this may also give us a vehicle to see if we need to buy a vehicle or lease a vehicle, something that everyone can use rather than just throwing something at it that sticks.
Mayor, may I say that, this, we can certainly change the procedure later as to how we pay employees for their use of their cars, but this is just putting money into the budget for whatever way we're going to pay them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And the only reason why I'm bringing this up at all, and Councilmember Shirley is probably doing the same thing, is because we have nothing to base these numbers against. I know it's small in the grand scheme of things, but it's a number that it's jumped out at all of us, and maybe we should take a look at. We need something to start with so that we can know how to handle the following year.
And it does bring to the surface those things that, is it appropriate to reimburse someone a vehicle expense or keep track of the mileage we use in the city? And I think it's more appropriate, and it's down the road, just direction that, mileage is probably a better way to handle that. And it may be that we're paying her more money, but she's not getting charged taxes on it. It's being handled appropriately.
I agree.
So just taking that same concept down, professional services is down 80%. In the scheme of things, it's not a big deal, but it's a drastic change. So, when we look year over year, we had budgeted 10,000 last year, and now we're at 2,000. I mean, we're not doing a budget versus actual, so I don't know really where we land there, but.
That one was scheduled to be 10,000 this year, and then it was reduced because it was more of that placeholder.
Okay.
So now it's.
So
we
has she
adjusted.
spent that much this year, or do you know?
No,
No, they're not department, no.
I'd have to check the number, but
So this is the cleanup of the placeholder stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
that's a reduction.
And then telephone and communications is up 22%. That seems kind of high for telephone, but I don't know. Did you guys bring, is there someone new that's got required, telephone services, and I don't know?
We did switch phone systems. Lynn, did the phones go up in the building?
Yeah, when we brought in the iPads and everything, those expenses went up because you guys have data plans on all your iPads.
Gotcha.
The old phone system, unfortunately, was obsolete, and we couldn't get repair parts for it, so we had to go out and find a new phone system.
Gotcha. And I guess really, these other ones are very small, but the other question I have there is library services. And the actual from 2020 to 2021 was $2,900, and we budgeted $6,500 year over year. Is that $2,900 more what the actual number is going to look like in 21, 22?
Most likely, yes.
Then, again, maybe that's a place we should tighten that number up, instead of, we're more than doubling what we expect it to cost.
Maybe go the halfway.
Yeah, do it at
3,000,
30,000 or something, yeah. Okay, I have a question on page 40. And this is the John Deere tractor / loader. do we currently have a tractor, a John Deere tractor?
Yes.
So
We
we,
purchased it 2 years ago.
okay, so we're just saving for a new one?
Yes. Replacement plan.
This is for grooming, and do we groom Bel Air Shores with this?
When we do each, we go down the other shores, a couple passes.
Do we get compensated for that? Do we bill the shores for that?
No, not currently.
Then just looking at the truck replacements, I don't think we're saving enough money. I'm just gonna throw that out there, it's up for conversation, but we think that in the end, in 2027, we'll need to buy a new vehicle for $28,000, and I don't think you're gonna get a pickup truck for $28,000.
Maybe the data rate adjusted. We purchased it off the sheriff's contract, so we probably gotta look at it this year with the vehicles going up.
And probably the same thing, the utility truck especially, because that, yeah, the prices are going high.
And that is with our, with a trade-in? Is that the plan, or?
I don't think they're worth much when we get done, right? Maybe
Pickup
50.
trucks go for a high.
You would be shocked right now.
I've been shot, I was shot 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Lynn, did we get a trade-in on the last
I would get it in my car.
truck?
I would.
Or did we just auction?
Lynn? did you-
Yeah,
Did we get a trade-in value on the 2016 F-250? or-
no, actually, we take it to auction, and typically we get more money than trying to trade it. I don't remember what we got, but that truck was, gosh, it was over 10 or 12 years old, and I think we got $3,000 or $4,000 for it. And just to clarify, the sheriff's contract is, those numbers in the budget are set up based on the sheriff's contract that we can rebuy a truck in that range for that price. So, I think the numbers are reasonable that we're saving, and, we just might have to modify the number at some point if we get new, Kyle, if you go get next year's contract, which will come out probably sometime in September, and see if you need to elevate it.
Okay.
But typically, you can buy a truck for $28,000 to $30,000 off the sheriff's contract.
Okay, on page 51, and I'm asking this question because I just have heard bits and pieces of it, and I don't know what's really happening here, but talking about the generator. We have currently saved $120,000 and expect to replace it when we have $240,000. Did I hear that we're getting a grant for this? Am I,
It hasn't been awarded, we applied.
okay,
So I submitted information back, it was probably three weeks ago. They requested more, so I don't know.
so they
At this
received the
point.
first application,
They
requested
did.
more information?
I've been providing information at least 3 back and forth to the state, so.
And when would that be awarded if we got it?
I'll check on that. It's kind of hard to get the exact date,
Right,
get an idea.
Is it possible that it would be before the year 2023?
Possible, the way we applied for the grant, there was 2 tiers of money, the way it was put together, and thought was that there'd be leftover money to cover our grant afterwards, so it kind of had to get through all the first tier awards and see where we end up.
So it wouldn't be a 100%, it'd be more like a
It's
20%.
75%.
75?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what we applied for.
But as it stands right now, we're fully budgeted.
We kept the full budget.
Take care of this next year.
Yes.
Okay, and then on page 52, again, this is just business sort of related, but this is Bayside Park master plan. I was told there was no master plan. I've seen a master plan. My question is, do we have a master plan, and if so, could it be distributed to council so that when we vote on purchasing equipment and so forth, we actually know what that plan is? Or can we get a presentation on what the plan is?
Lynn, do you know the last time the plan was updated?
That plan was done prior to me even being there. And this money was set aside to put, actually the 640 was set aside to put a gazebo out of the park. The 25 was to replace the playground money that we were using this year, that you used. So realistically, I think you can reduce that $10,000, because I understand that the playground came in at 15. But I'm sure there's some documents that they submitted, because that master plan was probably done 16. And if you remember, we did submit a grant for part of that, and the council asked for it to be refused at the time.
Are we actually following the master plan, or is this, did the title just continue to flow ever since the creation of the master plan?
The title continued to flow, and the money was, it's basically set up so if we needed to replace the playground or something, we had money to do that. But the 50,000 was projected to be for a gazebo, right there where the concrete pad, because that was something in the future that was planned for that area.
So it'd be safe to say that we really do need a new master plan for all the parks in the city.
I think your park and rec board could do a good portion of that. The city spent several $1,000s on that previous master plan. And yeah, they had a lot of pretty pictures and stuff, but it was over $1 million to do it all. And that was only for Bayside Park, it wasn't for anywhere else.
This would also be a good time to dust off the planning and zoning board's review of best uses for our parks. Because they looked at some outside the bun kind of uses for those things. And also, it's not just Bayside, we have 9 pocket parks in the city too, and more cities are starting to recognize the value of those little pocket parks because they're right in the neighborhood. People complain about no place for the kids to play, so they play in the streets, and there's a park right around the corner that they could be going to and playing. So the planning and zoning board report might be one of the first places to look and get the planning and zoning board involved in that aspect.
And so I guess from that conversation, we can reduce this budget number to $15,000 and then get a plan moving forward, how we proceed with with a master plan for all of our parks.
This is just way out, but it looks like nothing one year, then 50 1 year, and back and forth, just bringing the budget up. Is that right?
Just to clarify, if you submit for grants, you have to show them that you have money budgeted for these projects. And as an example, we had to be able to show them in the last grant that we had money budgeted, or you lose a lot of points in the grant process.
Can we then mark it, the budget should be marked for us to say that, asterisk, this number is here purely because it's a grant requirement, otherwise we would show zero.
Well, I guess you could.
I mean, yeah, because we have the
You're looking
question.
at- You're looking at the future, and the future has nothing to do with the current budget. Those numbers are numbers that, you know, whether it's the park or a stormwater project, those are numbers that were given to us, you know, like the engineer gave us numbers for each stormwater project. And in the out years, those numbers are going to fluctuate and change. And if you go after a grant, then you may have to change that number. But it's not really part of the current year budget. It's a projection for the future.
That's something we should maybe take a look at, because when we start looking at capital project burn down, done pretty much along the same timeline. And it's more just to get a grasp on what the future may hold and potential use of our reserves. If I see a major project coming on, I'm going to be very reticent to dig into the reserve, or, you know, vice versa. I just thought that's not the direction.
Okay, moving on page 54, again, just an observation, we've got accumulated funds for Morgan Park lot milling, concrete replacement, curbing, and so forth. My question is, do the meters self-fund this? Do we know what the revenue is off of the meters at Morgan Park? And if they don't, should we consider increasing the meter price?
Then you know if the meters revenue is in the budget for this?
Well, the meters are in this budget, the estimate for next year, I believe, was
Something like that.
150,000. There is some expense against that, but to your question, Jody, yes, if you took that revenue, and indirectly you're doing that anyway, and earmarked it for Morgan Park, well, of course, Morgan Park would pay for this probably in 1 year.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see that, and if it doesn't, you know, again, my position on those meters at Morgan Park, because they're not available, those spaces are not available to residents, our only beach access that we have, we've given away. We need to increase the price whenever we can.
Well, your current price, right, your current revenue for parking meters, outside of the marina I'm talking, is $117,000. And I would venture to say, I know Kyle, you probably just did the report for Bayside, which is probably a negligible amount to the state, but I'm guessing, I'll say $100,000 of that came from Morgan.
Did we ever make a couple of spaces available for only residents again? Did we roll that back?
No, you couldn't. I went to the county came back, went to the state.
I thought
came back and said,
but when you analyzed it, you told me that we had more spaces than we needed and that we could take 2 spaces back there.
And I did go to the county with my theory, and they told me, went to the state and came back and said, no. And there's an email, probably in my email file from John Bishop stating that. But we can give some of the parking spaces at the marina up to residents. That's what he said.
We don't want to go to the marina. We all live on that side of the Gulf Boulevard.
I understand that.
They're not replenishing our sand. I think we just pull them out anyway. That's another subject for another day, but anyway. Okay, Gulf Boulevard beautification. We had a lot of questions about this last time we met. And I need to know what the answers are. Do you have, oh, you don't remember what we were talking about? What the actual costs are versus what we have?
Yes.
We thought we had quite a bit of money saved, we were only short about $1 million or something.
We're short, 1,277,983.
And that was completing the entire project?
That's completing phase 1 and phase 2 entire project.
And we
Now,
go ahead.
did you get new numbers from Mark for the causeway to
Yes.
Greenland?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know those numbers were $2 million just for Duke.
So, yeah, 2 million for Duke, and Mark gave us 1,164,000.
We were thinking that long-term, we would save if we borrowed from the reserves to finish this project, and then we incrementally got that money back and put it right back into our reserves. Is that the plan? Are we considering that now, or?
Well, the utility consultants, the conduit is going to be locked in. That's locked in until 2025. The due costs, there was a spike due to material increase in price and labor. If the material comes down slightly, it could change it, but it also could go up. I don't have a way of predicting that for sure. That's locked in until December 8th, 2022, so it's only 180 days.
And the updated costs you got, that's starting on the north side and doing as far as you can, is that correct?
Phase 2,
It's phase 2.
phase 2 is it's actually north of the causeway, yes.
Okay, and I know that we discussed possibly switching that around to get more bang for buck because we were doing a longer span of undergrounding. Did you look into that at all? Just to,
Lynn, was there a reason why we started with phase 1? Was it just having the money in the budget? Or
Yeah, it was to phase it based on the money we were getting from the county. In total, the city of Bel Air Beach is getting about $3 million. We're getting $1 million from Bel Air Shore. And that money is spread over 5 years. As of this coming budget, you'll have about $2.2 million as of October 1st. And phase 1 was going to cost us, it was a little over $1 million with the new prices she gave us before I left. And Mark's price was like 700 and some thousand. Phase 2 was a little over $2 million. Evidently, Mark's price for the undergrounding was 1.3 for that. And then you've got about 200,000 for Spectrum to do the east side of the road in phase 2.
so roughly, phase 2 was, did I hear this right? Around 3.3?
I got 3.4.
3.4 plus another 200,000.
No, I got 3.4 with the 200.
Okay. And right now you have about 2.2 that's available.
Plus the 802,000 from the American Rescue money.
Right, if you dump that on the stormwater projects and take that money, it cannot be used for undergrounding.
Right. So we put that in stormwater, pull the money from stormwater.
Well, no, you're not technically, you're just moving the projects.
Right, but to show a chain of where it's coming from.
This is a massive decision you're gonna make on this thing. And I had an expectation that we were gonna get a briefing on all the different permutations of this thing and what the costs were. And am I missing something here? Is that gonna be a separate meeting, or are you gonna try to decide that
We're
Mm-hmm.
tonight?
just asking questions. That's all it is. Just trying to figure out if anything has changed or if we're just going on this or if they're looking at other possibilities. The points of interest come, they come to our attention as far as our curiosity. We want to know what's going on with it, so.
Well, I mean, the expectation was we were going to get some sort of briefing and recommendation sometime in the budget process. So when can I guess, or foresee getting that information?
Well, Jody is asking questions right now that concern her, and then we'll come around to you, and you can ask your questions, and then we will, anything that we've suggested that we don't like about the budget, if the council agrees, we give back, and then you can, again, this is a proposed budget, so it's not finalized.
Oh, no, I understand that. I see it as a kind of a big discussion, not a sub-part of necessarily just today's workshop.
It's just a conversation about page 55.
Sorry, I have a lot, but about only two more. So, and I'm bringing these up because it's a good time to, identify these capital projects and what we need to focus on. And, is there places to save money? Is it something we need to, rethink it? So, on page 56, I'm looking at the walking paths. We've talked about this before I ever took my first participation in a meeting in the city council, but we keep talking about this abandoned walking path and we need to get started on it, and again, it's another Parks and Rec situation. But when we're looking at this, we're talking about concrete sidewalks, I believe. I don't know why I think that, but is this something, could we, to kind of expedite it and get this thing moving some, just for conversation, we don't even talk about it, just, as we move forward, can this be done in asphalt, and could these sections be done when we're paving instead of trying to do every inch of walking path, in one contract? Can we just, if we're paving a street, can we hit that path in between those two streets so that section's done?
Yeah, that is the plan, it is asphalt. And
Okay.
the plan is, when, like 12th and 13th would be to try to get, while they're going out there paving, do that section between 13th and 14th.
Yeah, no one's ever walked that, it's a great path, you should.
You're talking about the walking path, so
Yes.
you're not talking about the street. You're
No.
I'm talking about the
13.
10-foot easement.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
Did that strategy change? Initially, it was to incorporate it with the street paving in the valley curve, and then there was some issue about, it was decided to forget that plan, let's just break it out and do it all in one shot. Did that strategy change
The strategy was always to do it with the street routers.
with the street paving?
Yes.
Then we didn't have a conversation.
Yeah, what we did, we needed to put some money aside for it, because the stormwater projects did not have money in the stormwater to do those walkways. So that's why we created a budget line to put that money in there, even though doing it at the same time.
So how far down is this walking path going to go?
it goes all the way from the south from First
That's what I figured.
up to,
All the way to 18th.
Blacktop
I
Boulevard.
think it stops at 8. It's blocked there, isn't it?
18.
18.
Yeah.
18.
Yeah, yeah,
18th, yes.
yeah. I think someone,
Which I never really understood how that happened.
yeah, I don't think it was intentional.
I think it used to be open there.
Yeah, I think it
Is
used
that
to.
right?
We can't find it, we don't know, we've looked, we can't see where there was ever an easement, but we think there was.
So the intent is the blacktop First to 18th Street, what, 4 foot wide,
10 feet.
10 feet wide?
Yes.
And it is chunked out and tied to street paving.
Yes.
Good, okay.
Now, does this also include the walkway that has been requested next to the seawall on, which street is that?
Belle Isle?
Belle Isle, yes.
I thought we looked into that. Lynn, do you remember? I thought we priced that out. And
problem with tree roots or something?
I was told it couldn't be done because of the slope, that we'd have to put a retaining, we'd have to put a stem wall up so you could get a flat sidewalk for ADA requirements.
You just cut the bevel out.
It seems like there's a way to do it, or even just shell a path or something, but there's a way to do it. But
Just bevel
it was
it out.
hit with
Go
resistance.
3 to 1, 2 to 1.
Well, it definitely seems like another opportunity for improvement, but I was just wondering if that, I'm not trying to make a decision,
Yeah.
but,
I didn't think we owned 10 feet of land from like First Street up to,
We have the surveys. It's an easement.
that's gonna go right up against some people's fences or right into some people's
Yes.
yards.
Well, you've been using it as your yards and stuff.
yeah, there,
And you recognize there hasn't been any noise or pushback on it, not paving them yet.
Right, and that's what I'm
Season
saying.
started,
I mean, I don't go down that much, but when I had my dogs that were living, we used to walk, and you go around the corner, and all of a sudden, there's like people out in the yard looking at you like, what the hell are you doing here? It's a little uncomfortable, is what I'm saying. Now you're gonna put a 10-foot wide path.
well, it's always been there.
I didn't think it was, I was just saying this, I didn't think it was 10 feet wide, I thought it was 4 feet.
Okay, last question, I promise. This is regarding page 63, the city streetlight program. I was pleasantly surprised to see we had this much in funds there. But again, do we have a official program or plan in place? And I know we hit on it briefly one night in a work session, but I just would like to see what that plan is, and, you know, can we start working the plan sooner rather than later? Do we have to wait till all the funds are here before we start working the streets that really need lights?
So the plan starts in the south portion of the city and works its way up. We identified the poles that could be removed, the wood poles that are currently there. And we looked into replacing them with concrete poles, but then we also looked at the solar lighting. And it still stands at doing the south end first, with the count of 10 to 15 solar lights. And the price per pole, we were quoted at $4,000 for the solar light itself, and then I got a quote for installation at about $8,000, so you're looking at $12,000 per pole. So that would be roughly 120 to 180
$8,000 per pole for solar light.
for install.
But you get that back over a 10-year period roughly.
No, I'm questioning why a pad cost $8,000 to set you're not running no water, you know? And you're not running no conduit, so,
We're not even using pads anymore, they're using augers.
well, I understand that, but $8,000 to pour it's a slab that makes 6
Oh,
inches.
no, there's damage, there's damage that gets done, and I'm sure that they have liability insurance and things like that, and they have taken into consideration. Whenever they did the island, there were many mistakes, and it's not that they're being sloppy, but they walk around and they survey, and because things are so deep in the ground, they may be 4 feet away from where they actually think they are, and it happens several times. So there's a lot involved in just making sure you get those things in the ground right.
I understand that, but I mean, this called snippers, I mean, everything here is so shallow. Water lines going, and
In my yard, you could stand up right here before you got to the pipe.
it's not like there's a frost line.
It wasn't a fly-by-night operation, they use high tech.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, so
Unfortunately, the precision of the sniffer stuff, as well as the drawings of where the stuff is. We had some hand grenades.
Yeah.
So this quote for the installation is direct burial for the pole. So it isn't the auger, well, it isn't the helical anchor. It's a direct burial.
Okay, that's all I needed. That sums up my questions.
Are we doing some of those this year?
Last I heard, I was gonna present a plan, and then we make a decision on.
Was that it?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, Mike Sable.
Cool, you ready? I saw the 5% increase in salaries and wages, good, appreciate that. Page 24, other contractual services, the 2,700% increase. Yeah, that $20,000,
Oh, excellent.
was that the
Software.
software? Because I'm really having second thoughts about that software. We're doing the budget right now, and even when we expense $20,000, it's usually over 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, they want a one-shot 20K purchase.
Yeah, that was for the software, and based on the numbers Heather was getting, it's probably gonna cost more than that if we did anything. It's not a very affordable.
So what's, I mean, are we saving that much time, effort, and most reporting legality in going to the system that we can't do that we've been doing all along?
Lynn, what are your thoughts on that?
Did you say something, Kyle?
Yeah, the thoughts on the financial program.
Well, we put that, we were having some issues with QuickBooks. I don't know, Kyle, if they got that rectified, if, we got an initial number from one company, but after looking at it, their $20,000 software program wasn't that great. And my last conversation with Heather and Andy was that they might have the QuickBooks situation rectified. If that's the case, then you don't need to spend it.
Yeah, recommend we drop that, if that's the case.
Okay.
Okay, that's going to kill. Okay, we already talked about the library cards. Page 29. Now, this is something that just came in. We have the new updated budget from Waste Management, and it matches what the county talked about, the solid waste. However, they've increased that number from 330, 235 to 330, 985. That's a $750 increase there.
I met with Bill from Waste Management on Friday. We were checking over his paperwork, and we discovered some errors in the numbers. I got in the papers you just got on Friday afternoon, so the budget won't reflect the exact number.
Okay. Yeah, because we just saw it, so yeah, it's cool. The final thing I had on here was page 69, and that was the interest income. Again, going from 674 to, well, we're back to the 700, but why the jumps? I mean, we're undergoing some increases in interest. Were you ever able to look at this and the other interest income?
I did get an overview from Heather.
Okay. This is 69. And there's also interest income in other areas, and we had a question. What's a placeholder?
We were looking at interest income. Wasn't the page that we were questioning before I had 10,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a previous budget. I go through here, side of interest incomes.
So the number is based on what she's seen in the past years. So it is a guess on how much interest we're going to make, because we currently have investments in the Marina Fund. We have a 6-month term CD that we keep rolling over, and that's paying 0.001%. It's valued at 103,000. The big investment we have is an SBA fund, and that is 96% of the general fund and 4% of the capital, has about 3.12 million combined. That interest fluctuates. So it's been 0.09% in October 2021, but has gotten up to 1.25 in June 2022.
Okay, yeah, that's about right, unfortunately.
And then the other interest is just in our money market accounts, which is minimal. Bank United and Truist, you can calculate that, but it's
What was the CD rate?
CD rate right now is 0.001%.
That's hard to believe. If I applied to Boulevard, I couldn't get something that low, I don't think. I mean, I see CDs advertised right now at 2.5% all the time. 18 months.
18, this is 6.
Capital One.
Yes,
Said
this one's, you
going up.
need
Yeah.
short terms. Okay, page, this is actually, it's the general fund department budgets. They don't have one here. It's about miscellaneous videotaping of monthly meetings and candidates, $10,000 a year is proposed. Yeah,
There's not page numbers.
there's not a page number, let me.
Okay.
Sure, we'll cut this.
Yeah, like, hey, good point.
Mayor and council, is that what it's
This is,
on? Yeah, it is, mayor, council.
yeah,
Okay.
Mayor Council Department 511, but there's no, yeah, no page number. So, change page numbers, please.
Yeah. Okay, so that is the videotaping that we do for every council meeting. That's the contract with Victor. That's something we need to consider moving forward because we're doing the Zoom meetings.
That's what I thought.
I spoke with him and asked him what he thought about administering Zoom meetings. He said that we could propose him a rate, but he'd like to make the same amount of money he was making before. I don't think that's gonna happen.
The problem I have with that is that he's here and he's doing all the work here, and there's no editing later. And I remember editing video, and that's what took so long, was putting it all together. He had 2 cameras back there, and he was trying to would dial them in together to make the presentation that he wound up on YouTube. We're hitting record, and it's live, it's recorded, and that's what's being put on YouTube now. So if anything, I would think that our costs should go down, unless he just wasn't being paid anything. I don't know exactly what each session costs, but
I believe it's, Lynn, is it 500?
It's like $4.95 and then $95 an hour for any over 2 hours. He gets some time, the $4.95 gives him setup time and time to do the edit afterwards. But if a meeting goes over 2 hours, and not so much lately, but previously we had a lot of meetings that went over 2 hours. And I did talk to Victor before I left and told him that, we need to come up with another plan. Now, it sounds like Kyle has spoke to him and he's not interested in changing his rate. So we may need to come up with a different plan so someone can basically monitor the Zoom video, because I think we're getting the same quality out of it based on what I've seen.
Can we, this is Kyle, one, can you talk to the other cities along the beach, see what they do, see who their people are? And number 2, can we talk to the attorney to ask him very specifically, look, we're recording in 2 different places. Can we just legally go right to Zoom and use that as our record? I don't know about storage on Zoom. I
we
mean,
can legally
Yeah,
go to a audio.
We could just do an audio recording.
Yeah, So,
Satisfying.
another thing is that, maybe I may understand where he's coming from, possibly. Right now, there's no one other than Lynn. Lynn is our only participant on Zoom. However, if this takes off, and I suspect that eventually it will, you're going to see people raising their hands, and they're going to want to interact, and you have to sort of be able to moderate the Zoom meeting separately from moderating the actual council meeting, and they have to work together. So it has to be someone who's capable of doing that, and it certainly can't be Patty, because she's busy actually taking minutes and our votes and, doing what Patty does.
Yeah, it brings up one good technical point, and I was thinking over the last meeting, is you should really have a monitor right in front of you, because you're managing the flow. And you can see us on the council, you can see somebody coming to the dais, but online, you kind of need to see, a hand raised up. I don't know how Zoom does it. So when the time comes, you can recognize at that point, you got Patty, because you're doing two different things. You can't be on Zoom, you can't be doing your notes. Might be helpful for the mayor to have something right there, a monitor in front of you.
Well, I think as it stands right now, Victor's probably our immediate solution. But once we find out exactly what all that encompasses, then maybe we look around and see if there's a better solution if he's not already our best solution.
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Gunn. See, lots of notes.
Not my sticky suit.
Some of you did a great job going through this. Thank you very much for your attention to detail. This is my 5th time through the budget process, and in some regards, it is still akin to dogs watching television. They know something's going on up there, but they're not quite sure what's going on. What I'm going to do is just give kind of a breakdown on some of my observations. At one time, we had talked about best practices. A lot of the budget things that appear in your book are accounted for within the stovepipes of departments or capital improvement projects and that sort of thing. At one time, I had asked for a breakdown by the .xxx accounting code so that we could look at line items across all the stovepipes. What are all the telecommunication costs within each department? What are all the clerical paper printing costs throughout each department instead of going through each one of these pages? I'm kind of finished managing boat docks, parking decals, and library cards. When Lynn Reeves and I sat down to go through the budget, I looked at 2 pages, that was it. And this was the breakdown across the pages by the .xxx accounts. And they were also prioritized by the highest value items to the lowest value items. So it was very easy to pick out, hey, let's talk about the valuable few. I don't need to be talking about items that are 0.03% of the budget. I'm more interested in those things that are like 12%, 18% of the budget, 10% of the budget. Interestingly, we had one initially when this thing was issued way back in October or whatever, and I haven't seen an updated one in a long time. Again, when I sat down with Lynn Reeves, it was very easy because we were able to sit down and go through this thing, and on just the pages for operating revenues and that sort of thing, we were able to just kind of go through very quickly and line out what are those things that we can actually control and those things that we can't control. And things start falling out very quickly. The only things you can control: stormwater assessments, parking meter fees, slip rentals. A lot of that stuff is tactical stuff. Stormwater might be something we're interested in dealing with. Personnel costs might be something we're interested in. Again, what are the valuable few that we need to be concentrating our time on? we just spent a lot of time talking about capital improvement projects and asking questions about it. And rather than our part being part of the review process, it should really be a participative process. There should be a portion of the budget bill that is just capital improvement projects, where we spend the day looking at all of the capital projects so that we understand what those projects are, what priorities they support within the strategic plan, and at the end of the day, we all have the same idea of these are the projects we're going to fund. And there's no discussion. When it gets to this portion of the budget review, we've already done that. It's sign it off. What's next? Contracts, that sort of thing.
Budget.
Budget in brief, that's something that I've been asking for a long time. If we don't have a budget process, an overview of the budget in this city, that a resident can't pick up and understand intuitively and comprehensively just by looking at maybe 2 pages, this is the money coming in, this is money going out, these are the projects we're going to do, this is money we have to take out of reserves to make up for the short. If they can't read that, then we're not doing our job. And we have the accounting staff that does most of this stuff. We have the city manager doing this stuff. We outsource the management of this stuff. By the time it gets to our level, it should be just a high level stuff. And I would defy any of you to sit down and explain this budget process to me in 5 minutes. Leslie's been through it more than I have. Can you sit down and explain this budget process in 5 minutes to me? I'll take that as a no. Okay?
Well, let's hear it.
You've hit all the fine points. Again, I'm taking the 35,000-foot view on this thing is, I said it, manage the valuable few, the 80-20% rule, make the capital improvement projects participative. We all sit down, we all prioritize them. And it needs to be an easily explained process with more detail that you can pick up. We shouldn't have to go through the Tokyo phone book here and figure out line items on each individual page. You should have one page you can look across and say, why is that number so high in that department and all the other numbers are so low? And again, it's not to nix stuff, it's to understand why it is, or at least somebody has to explain it. And that's accountability. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
I agree.
I'm just throwing the gauntlet down.
My first year on the council, we did this, and I think, remember, I said, why are we micromanaging personnel? Why are we micromanaging postage stamps, envelopes? Why are we doing this? This is the city manager's job to get a budget and let it work within it.
I mean, a good one is the automobile allowances. I have no clue what that total number is. I mean, I picked it out in 1 or 2 of the accounts, but I don't know what the total bottom line is.
Right.
And I don't know who's getting it or why or how, where's the accountability?
Yep.
I think that's a rub for you too.
Right, exactly. Are you finished? Okay. We've covered most of the things that I had flagged, but I did have a question about insurance. Insurance is just going up like crazy, but it's not going up like crazy in the budget. Why is that?
Health insurance, up and down?
It just looks like, a total of 1.6%. How is that even possible?
We get quoted yearly.
This is before the quote, though, is that right?
Lynn?
Okay, how we've always done the health insurance, to try to maintain it at the level that's budgeted for. We look at the plans every year, and we ask the health insurance company to give us options. As an example, Annie, you could probably recollect 2 2-3 years ago, we changed plans because the plan they had at the time went up drastically. So that's how we adjusted to maintain. We adjust, the plan to somewhat, maybe the co-pays go up, maybe something else changes as far as, the different allowances that are set up. But that's how we've managed it. And unfortunately, we've tried to go to like a group insurance with possibly some other cities, and we haven't been able to do that. And right now, you've got 4 employees on the health insurance, I think. And that's pretty much, it's based on the age of the employee. So we've been able to maintain it by adjusting the health insurance plan.
I'm curious what the rise is, percentage-wise for the employee.
The employee doesn't, it's provided to the employee.
Completely paid for.
Yeah, and that's typical, and pretty much, we did a survey on that, I want to say 3 or so years ago, and pretty much every city pays for the employee. At one time, we had one employee that we paid, I think it was 25% of the family, but he was the last person when he left, when he retired.
We also have property insurance though, correct? I mean, so.
Right, but that's with the Florida Municipal Insurance Trust.
I'd like to back up for 1 second. I talked about my 2 pages. Interestingly, operating costs are broken out very well. Operating revenues are broken out very well. But again, the valuable few. Interestingly, we talked about the cost of personnel services. We talked about these interfund transfers. Personnel services, one line item there. And if you look at the breakdown of salaries and wages is just one line item, right?
Right.
But depending on who you're looking at and how it's broken down, you have another 7 to 11 line items that feed into that number. And those are some of the numbers that would be interesting to look at. And the same thing, you go on interfund transfers. That's one of those smoke and mirror things that I've never really ever got my arms around. Lynn Reeves has it well adjusted in his head, but as many times as I've sat down to try to get it, it seems like it changes every time. Capital expenditures, that's only 5 line items, and yet it's one of our largest expenses there. Again, I think we need to spend more time and be more participating in some of these areas.
That's why other municipalities and counties, and state governments, they assign people to specific committees, and that's how things get done. And in that way, at least you always have one person on the council who knows exactly everything that goes on within that one particular section of local government. And that's one thing that we don't have. We typically are not involved with Parks and Rec, planning and zoning, budgeting. We can certainly do that, but there's also a little bit of gray area as to what would the attorneys recommend. And many will challenge and say that if you're attending these meetings, your presence alone could be, you could be accused of influencing that committee or that board. So there has to be some way that we can participate without possibly jeopardizing ourselves or people on these committees.
I'm a big proponent of benchmarking. Just about every municipality around here has a website, and if you go into their website, you can get into their budget. And one of the things you will typically see is something similar to a budget in brief. It's just a 2, 3, 4 level page document. It's targeting the residents, saying, this is how the budget works, this is where the big pots of money are, this is what we're financing, this is where your money's going.
So you're saying for like capital improvements, just give a line item number of what's spent, and if the citizen wants to get into it, then into the Tokyo phone book and see the carpet being spent, John Deere tractor being spent, Ford F-150 being spent. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I don't think you want to be that deep into the capital plan, but I would say that where your 8% of your expenditure is going to be for that year is only a handful of projects, at least be able to explain.
Well, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, do you want just a set number, and then the next page, if you want to get into the particulars, then you see everything else, it's how it's being spent. There's $1 million, but there might be 10 items at $100,000 a piece, saying this is what it's going to be spent. Because the way I'm reading it, it should be like a 2-page thing, that we should be, I agree with you 100%. Because I couldn't explain the budget in maybe 5 days, but that's what I'm trying to find out where you're going with that.
I would say maybe have this discussion later, but maybe for now, going to Largo has a great budgeted brief. I mean, take a look at Largo or Bel Air or some of those other places, St. Pete, Clearwater, and maybe I'll go in and print some out and I'll distribute them or something. But I mean, it's just to give us an idea of, hey, you should be able to explain it to your high school kid.
Right, I agree.
Just a comment, we do put, or did put on a quarterly basis the budgeted brief for the previous quarter. So that information should be on the website, and it basically shows the expenses and it shows the revenues that have come in based on the budget. I know Largo and Clearwater and all them, but they've got a much larger staff than the city of Bel Air Beach has. So there are some limitations on what you can create.
No, I agree, but it's just not simply a pie chart of this stuff. I think you need to go a little bit further and just provide a little more explanation. And I will search one out that I think is a clever representation of what I'm trying to get across here and bring it in as an example. Okay?
Now, did they not get the updated top to bottom for revenue?
Yeah, that's right in front of us.
Okay,
Yeah, that came out with the agenda.
okay.
Are you talking about this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It just-
sure.
I have to use a magnifying
Find
glass
it?
for, by the way. If we could print it in legal and maybe turn it sideways. it'd be nice.
Landscape, please.
Because you know what this is.
I don't even want to know who's the youngest on this board.
Thank my grandson for finding that for me.
Makes you feel young.
That's laughable.
He was using it to play with stuff, and I'm looking at bugs and stuff.
Burning, no.
Burning ants.
Burning ants. Look at bugs.
Are you in department?
Government Finance Advisory Committee.
Cool. Okay, any other questions or suggestions for this go-around? No, sir? We have 3 citizens back there. Would anyone like to speak? No? All right. Well, you have, you've got a small list of changes. It wasn't anything huge. Most of it was questions, correct?
Yes, I made notes on everything and get it changed.
Okay.
I have a question for the action item regarding how to proceed with the Gulf Boulevard undergrounding. Where are we going with that?
We need to include that in a work session. What I'm trying to do is get us past this budget meeting, the tentative millage rate meeting, and the city manager interview meeting, and then we will consider having a work session. But I'm trying not to kill everyone. So That being said, Mr. Riffler, would you mind emailing out the changes that you will be making? What pages they're located on, and then that way, if anything is left out that we've discussed, everyone read it, look it over, and then send him an email back if anything was left out. Yes.
Just kind of a recap, and this is not budget related, just as a follow-up to some of the questions in the last meeting. I had a really, I came across this code enforcement report that was put together and given to me a couple of years ago. Thought it would be something Laura puts together. It's a flow chart, and some good information. I'll share it with Patty and see if she can distribute it, just for further insight. And then I also looked at some old agendas and to points that were made about it would be nice to have, like, here's the background, here's what we need to work on, this is why it's being presented to you, and that sort of thing. These were actually all prepared by Patty, but they were how she used to present things in the agenda packet, so I'll also.
Still a great format and.
Great format, very informative, yes. And then this was one of Laura's older reports that was pretty intense and a lot of action, so.
I remember whenever the code changed, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we sent out a nice pamphlet. I know that it's still available online.
Some leave it in the foyer there. The folder.
They're still out there. Might not be a bad idea to consider recirculating those again, getting them out to the residents, because I think some people have forgotten what's important to the city and what our city code actually is. Just something to think about. We'll bring it up in the work session. Other than that, I think it's time to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Frank Baker, Jolie Shirley, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope.
Gotta get Lloyd out there, he's keeping.
This meeting is adjourned.